Helter Skelter. Two words that defined one of the darkest and most infamous chapters in American criminal history. Two words that sold millions of books, shaped a sensational trial, and convinced the world it understood exactly what the Manson family was and why they killed. For nearly 6 decades, that has been the accepted narrative. And for a long time, I believed it too. Then I started asking different questions. I spent 3 years researching and writing my book, The Manson Family: More to the Story, because I believed the real truth was buried underneath that narrative. I discovered that before the verdicts, before the trials, before the arrests in Death Valley, and long before the killings in the summer swelter of 1969, they were just young people in a turbulent era. Seekers, drifters, believers. Drawn toward something that felt, in those early days, like the most beautiful thing they'd ever experienced. This podcast is that story. By the fall of 1967, Charlie was eager to start building contacts in the record industry. He brought Pat, Lynn, and Mary to his second visit with Gary Stromberg that October. At Universal Studios, he made a big deal of parking the black bus in a spot reserved for movie star Cary Grant. During the meeting, Stromberg talked about a film score for an upcoming movie based on the life of Jesus Christ. He asked, would Manson be interested in helping the writers with the dialogue? Charlie practically howled in pleasure. After their meeting, he and the women went back to San Francisco, but they didn't plan to stay long. Charlie was approved to transfer his parole back to Los Angeles. The four began packing the apartment on Cole Street for their move. They made sure to acquire a stash of drugs ahead of their travels. During her 2011 parole hearing, Pat spoke about the steady stream of drugs in the Haight.
Drugs seemed to be everywhere. You could have gotten just about anything, and it seemed like at times we paid for them, but there was other times when someone would hand us these cards that were just dotted with acid. We smoked marijuana every single day. It was part of the lifestyle. There were some people that had come back at one time later on that were using intravenously, but I just stayed pretty much with the different forms of hallucinogens.
The first week of November, the foursome attended a party in the Haight. Charlie pulled out his guitar and began singing The Shadow of Your Smile, a jazz standard performed by greats like Tony Bennett. Across the room, a dark-haired girl with haunted eyes started to float toward Manson, drawn to him and his music. 19-year-old Susan Denise Atkins, born in San Gabriel, California, was very much a wild child. Her parents were drunks, and their home was filled with volatility. Susan had one older and one younger brother. During her childhood, she was molested by her older brother. Her life was turned further upend at 14 when her mother died of cancer. Her older brother was in the Navy when her mom died, and Susan was expected to act as the mother within the family. Susan likely began her formative years resenting the men she loved, but she might also have realized that she was stronger than them, that the normative distribution of power between the genders was profoundly unfair. She became a habitual shoplifter, her form of rebelling. Getting caught only made her bolder. Later, she began to dabble in recreational drugs. A frightening LSD trip in her teens did not deter her from continuing to numb herself with pharmaceuticals. When her father moved out of town, Susan was shuttled between relatives. She relocated to San Francisco and got involved with petty criminals, drug dealers, Satanists, all while putting herself in difficult personal situations. She hopped from man to man, always seeking someone who would take care of her. In the autumn of 1967, she and her friend Ella Jo Bailey were living with two men in an apartment at the intersection of Oak and Leon. Janis Joplin lived just a few doors away, and sometimes they heard her sing the blues across their kitchen window. Susan already had 99 miles of hard road behind her when she met Manson. She also had a criminal record by that time. That November day, she drifted toward the guitar player like a moth to the flame.
I wanted Charlie to grab me and keep me from falling,
she shared in her 1977 book, Child of Satan, Child of God, co-written with journalist Bob Slosser for Logos International. She squatted beside him, listening to Manson sing as though he were speaking into her soul. He was short and had a blue ink prison tattoo of girls on each forearm. As though in a trance, she felt the need to get up and dance for him. After a while, slowly gyrating on the floor, she realized that the music had stopped and the man was staring at her, smiling. She reached out and touched his guitar and said, aloud,
I'd like to play it. I bet I can play it.
Charlie told her to go ahead, play the guitar, but she didn't know how. Someone passed a joint and the conversation drifted, but Susan's eyes kept returning to Manson, sitting on a chair with a girl flanked on either side. While the music of Jefferson Airplane filled the room, Susan stood again to dance. This time Charlie joined her. They danced slowly, mirroring each other's moves. Finally, at the end of the song, each introduced themselves. He told her she was beautiful. He told her to always be free. 2 days later, Susan and her roommate were sitting, dejectedly, in their apartment. The men they'd been living with had just gotten arrested for dealing dope. She walked out into the hallway, and there stood Manson. He invited her to take a walk with him. She followed, uncertain but drawn to his forthrightness. They wound up in front of the apartment on Cole Street. He invited her inside. Mary, Pat, and Lynette were not there. Susan slowly removed her clothing with Charlie's help. He pulled her toward a full-length mirror and ordered her to look at herself. He told her again that she was beautiful. She giggled and said that he was crazy, but he held her and demanded that she really look at herself in the mirror. She felt like he could see inside her. She felt equally afraid and excited. Manson told her she wanted to have sex with her father, and she agreed. He demanded that she break free from the past. He laid her down in the bed and made love to her. The next day, Charlie and Susan went walking along the Haight together. He told her exactly what she needed to hear, that there was a place for her with him, and that he would never let her fall. Then he said that he and the others were leaving for Los Angeles the next day. He invited her to meet the women and to join them. On the morning of November 10th, Susan visited her parole officer. She asked for permission to travel with her new friends. He said he'd think about it. By the time he decided the answer was no, she was already gone. She brought Ella Jo and another friend, Barbara, with her. Ella Jo and Barbara joined Manson and the women on the road for a few weeks before returning to San Francisco. Sometimes Ella Jo's boyfriend came along too. They stopped in San Jose at the Morehouse home. Dean immediately ran outside, shouting about Charlie deflowering his precious daughter. Manson and the women got back in the bus and quickly drove away. But Mary and Lynn spoke to Ruth Ann briefly before departing and told her where they'd be staying in Santa Barbara. Meanwhile, as Manson's biographer Jeff Guinn relayed, In his 2013 book from Simon & Schuster, Morehouse grabbed a shotgun and set off in pursuit. He had no trouble tracking the black school bus, and somewhere along the road he cornered Charlie, announced that he was going to kill him, and put the shotgun to his head. The others from the bus were frozen with fear. Then Charlie did something that seemed to them to confirm his specialness, even his divinity. This crazy man was about to murder him, and Charlie wasn't afraid. Morehouse screamed that Charlie was about to die, and Charlie smiled and said quietly,
"Go ahead, shoot me,"
which stopped Morehouse cold. Charlie's tone was calm and his voice didn't quaver. He gently put his hand on Morehouse's shoulder and talked about how love was so much better than anger, and what a relief it was when you gave up your individuality and became part of a real family. Morehouse put down the gun. 3 days later, Ruth Ann ran away. Dean tracked her down where Manson and the women were staying and dragged his daughter home. But not before Charlie slipped Dean a tab of acid. Old Dean was noticeably calmer when he departed than when he arrived. Over the months to come, he would grow even weirder than before. Manson didn't want to get arrested again, so he convinced Ruth Ann to go home, but reminded her that if she were married, she'd be free. She went back to San Jose and eloped with a 23-year-old bus driver named Edward Weyvelhorst. She bided her time for a few months until she could join Charlie and the women. On November 12th, Charlie turned 33, same age as Christ when he died. While in Los Angeles, Charlie met again with Gary Stromberg. Stromberg set Charlie up with a recording session at Universal. He got to lay down a few tracks, get a feel for the studio. He was impressed and excited about working on the film about Jesus. Then Stromberg dropped a bomb. In the movie, Christ would be a black man. Poor Charlie couldn't backpedal any faster. The group packed up the black bus and hit the road again. They went to the Mojave Desert, then back to LA on November 26th, then Santa Barbara on the 27th, then San Francisco, then back to the Mojave, and around and around and around again, getting to know each other more intimately. In her 2018 memoir, Reflection by Peace in the Hall Press, Lynette recalled that
Susan opened up on the bus. She talked so much and laughed so loud, I reconsidered the prospects of living with her. There was a haunted loneliness about her that she covered with careless flippancy and daring, with sly silences and brash bombast. Charlie chuckled, telling me that Susan was not crazy, but coming from another side. I thought she was embarrassing.
But beneath Susan's cries for attention, Lynn soon discovered a sad little girl.
As we lay resting in the moving bus, having stayed up late the night before, I felt her hand on mine, alerting caution. But it was not a sneaking or lustful hand, only a hand that wanted to be accepted, so I did.
Atkins also proved useful. When the bus broke down, she quickly jumped out to find a mechanic, flirting to gain free repairs. Ella, Joe, and Barbara left after a couple weeks. Without them, Susan kindled the drama between the other women. Lynette recalled,
There was jealousy. It didn't manifest outwardly as much as within. A wretched herring wraith wringing twisted hands inside our chests, stifling breath and spirit. It wrestled each one of us and sometimes got us down. Mary was so afflicted she cried.
Manson, Mary, Lynn, Pat, and Susan spent early December in Las Vegas. They then drove to Arizona, New Mexico, and arrived in El Paso on December 6th. They spent a week in New Mexico, then a week in Mississippi and Alabama, visiting Pat's folks, then back to California. In mid-December, they visited Hog Farm, the most famous commune of its time. Founded by Wavy Gravy, true name Hugh Romney, a peace activist from New York, Hog Farm sat on the grounds of a pig farm in Tujunga, north of Burbank. The commune was created in the mid-60s when the Merry Pranksters, friends of writer Ken Kesey, aficionados of the acid lifestyle, got stranded near LA on a trip south to Mexico. Wavy Gravy supplemented the commune's coffers by working as a character actor. By 1966, they were hosting open concerts at the farm, featuring Jimi Hendrix and the Grateful Dead. Later, in August 1969, the Hog Farm prepared all meals at the Woodstock Festival. Initially, the communers totally dug Charlie Manson. In the 1995 TLC documentary, Charles Manson, the Man Who Killed the 60s, Wavy Gravy explained, "A lot of the hog farmers were very enamored of his smile. He could mesmerize you." But before long, they got a taste of Manson's sinister underbelly. He pissed off Wavy Gravy, who then led the hog farmers on a collective Om chant to boot Manson's group from where they were camped and rid their happy collective of his dank vibes. But during their brief stay, the women met the Lake family, who had dropped out of society and were living at Hog Farm. Mr. and Mrs. Lake were acolytes of Timothy Leary and beat writers Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac. Mrs. Lake made a point of telling the women about her daughter Diane, who was in the Los Angeles area with friends. She gave Charlie a photo of her daughter, an attractive auburn-haired 14-year-old, and asked him to keep an eye out for her. When Manson and the women were chased off Hog Farm, they fled back to the Southwest. 2 days after Christmas, the black bus broke down in Winslow, Arizona. Pat offered her gas card to cover the repairs. They panhandled for cash or sang songs together in coffee shops for their meals. By year-end, Manson had decided to settle down in Los Angeles in time for Mary's upcoming delivery. Charlie had 2 other children, but he had not seen one in several years, and it's not clear if he ever met the younger, Charles Luther Manson. This new baby was a chance of happiness and a new beginning. What could possibly go wrong? Thank you for listening to the Manson family, more to the story. In this podcast, we focus on peeling back the layers, one chapter at a time, in order to demystify the family and destroy the myths that leave us in the stone-cold dark. In our next episode, The Spiral Staircase, the family finds its way to a ramshackle house on Topanga Beach, and for a brief, genuinely hopeful moment, the future looks bright. Bobby Beausoleil arrives, beautiful, talented, and mercurial, and inspires Charlie to dream bigger about his music. And then there is Diane Lake, the girl whose parents we just met at Hog Farm. Diane is just 14 years old and living a far more adult life than she can handle when she walks through the door of the spiral staircase and feels, for the first time, like she has found people who actually want her. She has been failed by her own parents in ways that are almost incomprehensible. What she discovers with Charlie and the women feels like the opposite of that. It feels like family. It will be a long time before she understands what it actually is. This is H. Allegra Lansing. The story of the family and the murders of 1969 have always been more than a crime story. This is a human story, and there's an imperative to understand it, because the vulnerabilities that drew those young people into darkness are not unique to them. They belong to all of us. This podcast series is drawn from my book, The Manson Family, More to the Story, published by Story Stratosphere. and is based on historical records, contemporary reporting, and archival research. Citations for this episode can be found in the show notes. All writing and most narration by yours truly. Theme music is Masked by Silent Partner, with additional scoring from Echoes of Time by Kevin MacLeod.